Good day, beautiful people, and welcome back to Life Treasures and Golden Moments. This is Natalie Silva, where I share with you true stories of miracles and hopefully stories of inspiration. To my regular listeners out there, hello again, and to everyone that's tuning in for the first time, welcome aboard, and I hope you'll enjoy being with us. As you know, this is the month of February, the month of love, which I always call it, and Valentine's Day is a couple of days away. And, I just want to say this, that through the years and my travels, I've noticed that couples that are together, that's wonderful. But then there are a lot of single people out there that don't have a significant other. And they all think that Valentine's Day is just for couples, but it really isn't. Valentine's Day is kind of a flag day, so to speak, to say, hey, this is a day of love. A love that we share with everyone, with parents, with family, with friends, acquaintances, to say, hey, hello, we appreciate you. You are special. Because everyone needs to know that they are appreciated and loved. And I guess Valentine's Day is the day to do it, to let them know. We need to let them know every day, but it gives us the opportunity to let them know for sure that they are. It's been said that love doesn't make the world go round. Love is what makes the ride worthwhile. So give it a go. Reach out and see what a difference it's going to make in your life by making someone else feel happy in theirs. Today's story was authored by Catherine Thompson Presley. And the title of the story is called A Softer Heart. Miserable. I was just plain miserable. We'd moved from our farm in Oklahoma to the gritty Gulf Coast town of Galveston, Texas, and I was none too happy about it. Papa worked as a stevedore foreman on the Galveston wharfs. He initially had gone there to help with the war effort, but after the war, he stayed on to save money to buy more land in Oklahoma. I had just entered my teens, and I was moody, rebellious, and angry at being dragged off to Texas. I loved our two-room schoolhouse way back home and hated the school in Galveston. I missed my grandparents and my friends in Oklahoma, and our dingy, crowded apartment in Galveston couldn't hold a candle to the freedom and homey comfort of our farm. I knew my parents were worried about me, their firstborn, but they knew nothing about adolescent rebellion. They both had grown up in large, impoverished families on poor little cotton farms where they worked so hard to help keep food on the table. They had no time or energy to rebel against stern parents. Besides, sassing and disobeying would not have been allowed or tolerated. I knew all that, but I didn't much care. It was a miserable time for me, and I retaliated by making my parents as miserable as I could. Finally, my exasperated mother turned me over to my father and instructed him to give the girl a good bawling out. The thing was, Papa was a conflict avoider, especially with me. He usually left the fussing and the spanking to Mama, but she had thrown the ball in his court, and dealing with me had become his responsibility. Papa's strategy was to take me out to the movies, thinking he'd slip in his lecture sometime during the evening. Of course, I was on to him. We started out by going to see a rip-roaring Western. Papa and I both loved Westerns, so while we watched the movie in the darkened theater, it was easy to forget about our problems. When the lights went up, we reluctantly came back to the present. He visibly began to brace himself for the talking to he had to deliver, while I stiffened in anticipation. Papa took me to the Star Dairy over chocolate malts. He tried to set me straight, but he never quite pulled it off. After several false starts, we just sat and savored our malts in silence. I tried to keep my eyes on the slowly shrinking contents of my malt glass, but every so often I'd steal a glance at Papa. I noticed how much he'd aged since we left the farm. He seemed older than his 44 years. Now furrows creased his brow, deep lines ran from his nose to his chin, and his hands were gnarled and torn and worn. Grueling 16-hour days on the waterfront had taken their toll. And so, most likely, he had a rebellious daughter, I suddenly realized. Oh, no, you don't, I thought, banishing my unwanted thoughts of compassion. I was still young, even if my parents weren't, and I had my own life to live. I hardened my heart, and I tried not to notice my father's worried glances in my direction. We drove home in silence. Later, I heard him quietly assure my mother that everything would be okay. The next morning, Papa dropped me off at school on his way to work. He told me I'd have to take the bus or walk home after school because he was going to pick up some gear on the Galveston waterfront and then drive over to the Texas City to supervise the loading of the High Flyer. I'll never forget the look of shock and happiness on his face when I impulsively leaned over and kissed him goodbye. I had not voluntarily kissed either of my parents in a long while. Later that morning, as I labored over my sketch of the elementary canal in science class, my pencil suddenly wobbled crazily out of my hand across the page and off the desk. A tremor had shaken the page, and the whole building, and a strange sound pulsated in our ears. Everyone in the classroom turned to look out the north windows and saw a terrifying mushroom cloud rising in the blue April sky. Although in 1947 we were still very new to the atomic age, we knew about mushroom clouds. A huge crack had spread across the library wall upstairs, sending teachers and students screaming down the hall. Pale-faced, our young science teacher quickly organized us as if for a fire drill. She had to stop and assist Lonnie James and Luther Hill, who had both wedged themselves under the same desk and were stuck fast. We huddled in little groups on the beach side of the school grounds and watched the spreading cloud darken in the bright spring sky. The falling embers soon blackened my new lavender cotton dress. Everyone was abuzz, wondering what in the world had happened. Rumors flew everywhere, every which way, although 2 hours would pass before we got the full story. One rumor we heard was that the Texas City Monsanto chemical plant had blown up. Children whose parents worked there began to weep. I was trying to comfort one of them when someone else said that the ammunition irate had exploded on the Grand Camp, destroying the ship as well as the High Flyer berthed alongside it. I froze. That was where my father was working that day. The playground and the field seemed to recede from my vision, and I felt as if I were floating somewhere beyond it all, observing the others and myself as if from another dimension. In my mind's eye, I saw Papa sitting hunched and worried, haggard and old-looking, at the drugstore counter the night before. Proud like the rest of our Scottish-Irish Cherokee clan, I wasn't about to let anyone see me cry, so I wandered off to a far corner of the schoolyard. As the ocean spray of the Gulf streaked the black smudges on my dress and my face and my hair, I counted seagulls and looked for four-leaf clovers, fighting back the tears and silently praying, "Please, Lord, no, not my papa, not my papa." The dark cloud from the Texas city soon blotted out the sunlight, while cinders continued to rain down on us as we shivered in the chilly air. Luther Hill came over and sat down beside me. We had been friends since the 7th grade, friendly competitors for the best grades in math and riding the same bus to and from school. Luther was short, freckled-faced, a little overweight, and totally lacking in athletic prowess. Some of the other boys teased him unmercifully, but he took it with good humor and grace. If I had a brother, I would have wanted one just like Luther Hill. "Catherine Jane, where's your dad working today?" he asked, in the top of his freckled nose crinkling with concern. "He had to pick up some things at Pier 29. Then he was going to work on the High Flyer," my voice wavered on the ship's name. I looked more closely at Luther. His face was wan. I didn't have to ask him where his father was. Luther talked all the time about his dad's job at Monsanto Chemical. The school bus summoned us back inside, and we were dismissed to find our way home the best way we could. There were no buses because they were all being used to help evacuate the living and the dead from Texas City. I walked a 3-mile trip to my home when a car startled me to attention. My Uncle Barney pulled up alongside me in his old Ford. The instant I saw him, I knew my father was gone. Otherwise, Papa would have come to get me for himself. As if in slow motion from a great distance, Uncle Barney motioned me to get in. Numb with grief, I crawled into the back seat. I barely took notice of the man sitting there. Didn't recognize him until he reached for me. When Papa put his strong arms around me, I forgot for a moment that Scottish-Irish Cherokees aren't supposed to cry. We listened to Papa tell the story of his deliverance over and over again. It was the first time in his long working life that he had ever been late to a job. He lost his warehouse keys and had been crawling around on the Galveston docks looking for them when the ship exploded across the bay. If not for his keys slipping through the hole in his pocket, he almost certainly would have gone up with a high flyer. We later learned that the blast had obliterated the 2 ships and 4 square miles of Texas City, and the more than 600 people were dead or missing. It took us more than an hour to cross the main intersection in Galveston on our drive home that day. We watched a continuous parade of buses, trucks, ambulances, and cars carrying victims to the 2 hospitals. World War II was still a vivid memory at the time, and I remember thinking, this must be what war-ravaged countries are like. I also remember feeling a powerful barrage of emotions surge through me as I experienced my first transcendent moment. I felt thankful to live in a war-free country. I felt grief for the victims and their families. I felt luminous joy that my father's life had been spared, and I wondered at the great mysteries of life and death. Many of my fellow students lost their parents in that explosion. Luther Hill's father disappeared without a trace. Tragedy would one day become to our family as it inevitably comes to all. But on the day Texas City blew up, it miraculously passed us by. Because he lost his keys on that April morning, my father lived for another 32 years, and I found my way again. A special thanks again to our author, and for helping to remind us of the special gifts that we have in our life. May you have a blessed day, a blessed week, and a very happy Valentine's Day full of love and joy. Remember, if you cannot find the sunshine, be the sunshine. Till next time, this is Natalie Silva. Take care, and may God bless.